The lock on the Red Cross warehouse had not been opened for 3 days, yet the camp records showed every parcel had been counted, signed for, and delivered to the prisoners. But when a night guard heard scratching behind the rear doors and found a German POW hiding under the loading ramp with a torn receipt in his fist, the officers stopped speaking because the key was missing, the shelves were full, and Patton was already on the road. The first warning came when a night guard crossed the rear loading yard and heard a dull knock from beneath the wooden ramp behind the locked Red Cross warehouse. He lifted his lantern toward the sound, called for the gate corporal, and found a German POW crouched under the boards with wet mud on his hands and a torn paper held tightly against his chest. The prisoner did not run when the guard pulled him out, and he did not answer the first questions, but he kept pointing at the warehouse door as if the building itself had become more important than his own arrest. The corporal took the torn paper, wiped rainwater from the ink, and saw part of a Red Cross receipt with a prisoner number, a barrack stamp, and a signature line that had been scratched out. The warehouse was supposed to be empty after the week's distribution, but when the corporal lifted his lantern to the narrow window, he saw stacked crates inside the building. The camp captain arrived with 2 MPs and ordered the prisoner taken to the infirmary, not the punishment block, because the man's wrists were bruised and his coat smelled of old flour dust. The supply clerk was called from his bunk and told to bring the warehouse key, but he searched his ring twice and claimed the Red Cross key had been signed out by the warehouse sergeant. The warehouse sergeant arrived 10 minutes later without the key, saying he had left it in the office drawer after the evening count, but the drawer was open and empty. The captain ordered the whole loading yard sealed, then sent MPs to check whether any Red Cross parcels had been issued after dark. They found no delivery wagons, no signed release orders, and no approved movement slips. Yet the warehouse ledger showed 27 parcels marked as processed that afternoon. The German POW from under the ramp was brought into the administration hut, where an interpreter asked why he had crawled behind the warehouse instead of reporting to his barracks. The man placed his finger on the torn receipt and said the rest of it was inside. The captain looked from the locked warehouse to the full shelves behind the glass, then ordered a message sent to headquarters before anyone opened the door without witnesses. By morning, every guard knew the Red Cross warehouse had become the center of something larger than missing food, because the records said delivery had happened, the door said no one had entered, and one prisoner had risked punishment to prove both statements could not be true. Subscribe for more forgotten German POW stories like this one. The escalation began when the quartermaster arrived with a second set of keys and found that none of them fit the warehouse lock. The lock had been changed without a written order, and the old lock was later found inside a coal bin behind the supply office with fresh tool marks across the metal. The captain ordered the warehouse sergeant separated from the clerk, then brought in 2 MPs to break the door only after a photographer recorded the seal, the hinges, and the altered lock. When the door opened, the men inside stopped at the entrance because the warehouse was not empty at all. Rows of Red Cross parcels stood untouched against the right wall, while crates of canned meat, powdered milk, chocolate bars, socks, soap, cigarettes, and medical tins filled the shelves behind them. The captain walked between the stacks with the torn receipt in his hand and found the missing half pinned beneath a crate lid, as if someone had used it to mark a hidden pile. The full receipt proved that the prisoner under the ramp had been assigned a parcel that had never reached his barracks. The supply clerk claimed he had only copied numbers from a worksheet, but the worksheet showed the same parcels marked as damaged, spoiled, and removed from issue. MPs opened one crate marked spoiled and found clean tins inside, wrapped in dry paper and stacked for private removal. The escalation sharpened when a second prisoner receipt was found inside the same crate, then a third, then a bundle of complaint notes tied together with string. The complaint notes had been written by prisoners who said their Red Cross parcels were delayed, opened, reduced, or replaced with camp rations already owed to them. The warehouse sergeant denied stealing anything and said the parcels had been held for inspection because prisoners were trading goods and causing disorder. The captain asked why a locked warehouse needed a new lock if the only purpose was inspection, and the sergeant gave no answer before the MPs removed his sidearm. Outside, prisoners gathered along the fence as crates were carried into the yard for counting, and the news moved from barrack to barrack that the Red Cross warehouse was full. By noon, the captain had two problems that could not be hidden: a locked building full of supplies and a record system that had turned undelivered aid into completed paperwork. He sent another message to headquarters with the broken lock, the receipt halves, the hidden complaint notes, and the request that Patton inspect the warehouse before anyone in the camp changed the story. The major consequence came when the doctor examined prisoners from the affected barracks and found men who had lost weight, while their Red Cross issues were listed as complete. He ordered those men moved to the chapel room for controlled feeding, and the captain placed MPs at the door to prevent warehouse staff from speaking to them. The prisoner who had hidden under the ramp identified the crate where his parcel had been stored, then pointed to two guards who had carried boxes out after lights out on earlier nights. MPs searched the guard quarters and found chocolate wrappers, foreign cigarettes, sewing kits, and powdered milk tins hidden under blankets and inside boot lockers. The captain ordered every guard assigned to warehouse duty removed from the prisoner compound until the investigation ended. That decision triggered anger among several American guards, who said prisoners were being believed over soldiers, but the captain placed the torn receipt on the table and said paper had betrayed the soldiers before any prisoner had spoken. The consequence spread when the camp kitchens were inspected, and the cook admitted that Red Cross goods had sometimes been added to common soup after already being counted as individual parcels. This meant prisoners had not only lost their aid, but had also been made to eat traces of it without knowing their own packages had been taken from them. The quartermaster opened the daily distribution books and found whole barracks marked as served on days when no parcel card had left the warehouse. A second clerk admitted that numbers had been copied from the warehouse sergeant's private sheets because the captain had trusted the Red Cross system to run without daily inspection. The captain ordered all remaining parcels moved into the open recreation hall, where prisoner representatives, MPs, the doctor, and an outside officer could count them together. The camp changed visibly that afternoon, because boxes that had been hidden behind a locked door were carried through the yard in front of every barracks. Prisoners watched their names being called from the original lists, and some men stepped forward with receipts they had kept for weeks because they had never received what the signature claimed. By evening, the warehouse was no longer just a storage building, but proof that authority had been used to turn relief into leverage. The captain prepared the evidence table for Patton with the altered lock, the hidden key fragments, complaint notes, spoiled labels, private worksheets, and the torn receipt that had started the entire case. The major reversal began when Patton arrived and refused to start in the office where the officers had arranged the ledgers. He walked straight to the Red Cross warehouse, stopped at the broken lock, and ordered the door opened again while prisoners and guards stood behind separate lines in the ring. The warehouse sergeant expected Patton to see disorder, missing signatures, and prisoner complaints as proof that control had to be tightened. Instead, Patton stepped inside, looked at the stacked parcels, and ordered the nearest crate opened in front of everyone. An MP lifted out food tins, soap, socks, cigarettes, and a folded Red Cross card with a prisoner name written clearly across the top. Patton told the interpreter to read the name aloud, then ordered that prisoner brought from the chapel room with the doctor present. The prisoner arrived slowly, looked at the card, and confirmed it was his parcel, though the ledger showed it had been delivered 11 days earlier. The reversal hit the yard because the prisoners were no longer being accused of lying about missing aid. The supplies themselves were proving the lie. Patton ordered the warehouse sergeant to stand beside the crate while the captain read the delivery record aloud, including the false date, false signature, and false damage mark. The sergeant tried to claim wartime shortages had forced substitutions, but Patton pointed to the unopened shelves and said shortages do not require new locks. Then Patton ordered every Red Cross parcel counted publicly before sunset, every false signature copied for investigation, and every affected prisoner medically checked before distribution. The captain, who had feared the camp would collapse into anger, saw the mood change when the first prisoner received a parcel with his name still intact. The men did not cheer, but they watched closely as one sealed box after another moved from hidden inventory into open hands. The reversal became complete when Patton ordered the warehouse keys taken away from supply staff and placed under joint control of the captain, the doctor, and an outside MP officer. The locked warehouse had been built as a storage point, then used as a private gate of power, but by nightfall it had become the most public place in the camp. The final irreversible event came when MPs opened a narrow false wall at the back of the warehouse and found a small hidden room behind stacked lumber. Inside were sorted parcels, prisoner letters, private trade lists, liquor bottles, and envelopes filled with money taken from exchanged cigarettes and chocolate. The evidence showed that the missing aid had not only been withheld, but turned into a quiet market controlled by men who decided which prisoners stayed useful and which prisoners stayed hungry. Patton ordered the warehouse sergeant, the supply clerk, and 2 night guards arrested in front of the evidence table rather than removed quietly before dawn. A transport truck was brought to the loading yard, and the accused men were placed inside while the prisoners watched from behind the fence. The captain then ordered the false wall torn down completely, leaving the hidden room exposed to the rain blowing through the open warehouse door. Every parcel inside that room was photographed, listed, and matched against prisoner names before any distribution continued. The doctor selected the weakest men first, not because they had complained loudest, but because their bodies showed what the records had concealed. The prisoner who had crawled under the ramp was brought to the warehouse entrance and given the parcel that matched the torn receipt in his hand. He did not open it at once. He held the box against his coat while an MP signed a new delivery form in front of the captain, the interpreter, and 2 prisoner witnesses. After that, the camp procedure changed permanently. No Red Cross warehouse could remain locked without dual signatures. No parcel could be marked damaged without inspection, and no prisoner receipt could be accepted unless the man himself or a witness confirmed delivery. The final act came when Patton ordered the broken lock and torn receipt sealed together inside the investigation file. The warehouse doors stayed open until every name on the list had been called, and the building that had hidden stolen aid became the place where the entire camp watched the old system end. 2 days later, the Red Cross warehouse stood open in daylight, with the false wall gone and the shelves marked by barracks number instead of private notes. The prisoner who had hidden under the ramp walked past the loading door with a parcel under one arm and a signed receipt in the other. When the captain filed the final report, he placed the broken lock on top of the papers, because that lock had protected food from the men it was meant to reach. Most people know how World War II ended. Very few know what happened inside these prison camps. Subscribe for more untold WWII stories.